Climate change is here, now. As the world continues to heat up, climate change's symptoms become more apparent, and nowhere is this clearer than for extreme weather, from floods to droughts to heat waves. Let's take a look at some of the most devastating extreme weather events of 2022 and see what they teach us about how climate change is hurting us. And to stop this video being a depress fest, let's also take a look at what these events teach us about how we can protect ourselves. I'm Adam, a climate scientist with a PhD from Oxford, sharing what you need to know about climate change. And 2022 was one of the hottest years ever recorded, over 1 degree Celsius hotter than pre-industrial temperatures, and rapidly closing in on the 1.5 degree temperature limit that the world has agreed. To know why 2023 is likely to be even hotter, check out my video over here. But just because we haven't heated the planet by 1.5 degrees Celsius yet, it doesn't mean that we're currently safe. This was made clear by the heat wave that devastated India and Pakistan during March and April of last year. Climate scientists found that it was made around 30 times more likely by global warming. It can be hard to visualize just how damaging heat waves are, but they are silent killers. This was made clear by the heat wave in India, which claimed lives and made it impossible to work for people whose livelihood is made by being outside. Think of anyone from street vendors to farm workers. And speaking of farming, this seriously hurt India's wheat crop. This had worldwide consequences since it came at a crucial moment where India had been hoping to make up for food shortages owing to the invasion of Ukraine. All this reminds us just how connected climate change is to everything. A heat wave in one part of the world affecting food supply globally, and the effects of climate change reinforcing the effects of a war. But we're not helpless in the face of these shocks to our food systems. For example, shifting to more balanced diets could make our food systems tougher and free up millions of square kilometers of land. And practicing more sustainable land management, for example by using more diverse crops, could protect everything from our soils to our jobs. Tragically, the heat wave was far from the only destructive weather that Pakistan was faced with in 2022. The country was hit by biblical flooding later in the year, the scale of which was truly hard to comprehend. We're talking about millions of people displaced from their homes, and the recovery is still ongoing today as people struggle to rebuild their lives. As the world heats up, the hotter atmosphere holds more water, so when it rains, it pours. And indeed, climate change did make this flooding worse. As the world continues to heat up, it will cause more disasters like these, and will cause disasters like these to be even more disastrous. If the storm clouds over Pakistan had a silver lining, it's that they brought the winds of change to the climate change negotiations later in the same year. For decades, lower income countries have argued unsuccessfully that they need to be compensated for the increasingly angry weather that they're facing because of the emissions of higher income countries. This reparation for these losses and damages is imaginatively called loss and damage, and has been resisted by countries like the US and Europe because apparently these countries don't like being held responsible for their actions. By teaming up with other nations, Pakistan won a rare victory at last year's climate change negotiations, the setup of a loss and damage fund. Now, we still don't know what, if anything, richer nations will actually pay into this fund, but it's still a huge step forward, one of the most controversial issues in all of climate change policy. For more on what loss and damage actually is, check out my video over here. But I can't put things much better than climate change negotiator Nabil Munir, who said, "Loss and damage is not charity. It's about climate justice." But climate change doesn't just affect the most vulnerable nations, it also affects the most vulnerable people within nations, and that includes relatively wealthier countries, something made clear by the heat waves that spread over much of Europe during summer of last year, shattering records across the continent and causing tens of thousands of deaths. And the people who suffer the most tend to be the people who already suffer the most. Think of the very old, the very young, people who have to work outside for their living, people with poor housing, or people with no housing at all. It doesn't have to be like this though. We can take measures to protect ourselves from extreme heat. That could be things like better insulating our homes, setting up cooling centers, educating people so they know the signs of heat stroke, and encouraging everyone to check up on people in their communities. And that's really the theme through all this extreme weather of 2022 and beyond. Yes, climate change plays a crucial role, but what really hurts us, both physically and financially, is our failure to prepare and our failure to protect the people that are most vulnerable. So as burning fossil fuels continues to heat up our planet, and weather events which used to be extremely rare become less rare but more extreme, fighting on 3 fronts can help save people's lives. Firstly, we can adapt our infrastructure to put in place safety measures so that when disaster strikes, we're ready. This means social interventions, like taking care of vulnerable people, just as much as it means physical interventions, like flood defenses. Secondly, we can recognize that the richest have done the most to cause these threats that are being felt the most severely by the poorest. And by recognize, I mean cough up money. And thirdly, we obviously need to stop doing that whole heating up the planet thing. To do that, we need to reach net zero as quickly as possible. But what does net zero actually mean, and how do we make what it means actually meaningful? Well, watch my video over here to find out. Okay, until next time. Bye. Used to be extremely where?